What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another edition of the Take Three podcast. As always, I'm joined by my guy, Alex. And we're back at it again. We kind of reached that stage. The NFL season is over now. Super Bowl. Congratulations to the Rams. Sucks if you're Cincinnati. I know how that feels. I watched the Eagles lose in 04. That hurt. And then it took all the way till 17 to make another run at it. I know how that feels, but you have Joe Burrow, right? You have stuff to look up at. You got Burrow, you got Chase. If you get an O line, you get rid of Eli Apple. That man talks trash and he gets burned up all game. It's just how it goes. But when you look at LA, it paid off, right? They went out, got Matt Stafford, get rid of Jared Goff, win a championship, and that all-in mentality, as they said at the parade. F them picks. That was hilarious, to be honest. Maybe the best part, because there was only about 47 people in attendance at the parade. But good for them, right? So, any words for the Rams fan, then kind of where we're at now that the season's over? It's kind of like we're kind of winging for topics. Gunning different stuff as you see on here. We'll get into is Matthew Stafford a Hall of Famer now that he has that one ring? We'll jump into that. But quick thoughts as the season comes to a close now.
Yeah, congrats to the Rams. They proved me wrong. The trade for Stafford was the missing piece that they said they needed, and they got it done. It'd be interesting to see if they actually run it back. It's so hard to in the NFL, right? Like we saw the Bucs bring everybody back, and they were still beat up by the end of the year. You never know with football. But congrats to the Rams and their fans and everybody. The parade was fun to watch. The attendance seemed a little bit weak, if I'm being honest, but good for the Rams, dude. Happy for them.
I saw one person fell off a stage too, the camera person. That was
She got really hurt from that too.
Yeah, I believe fractured spine, but Matt Stafford and his wife, I believe, said they're taking care of that. Her expenses full. So, that's kudos to Matt Stafford. He seems like he's a good dude. I'm not really a huge Stafford fan, but I also don't hate him. I was happy for Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald, that really kind of completes the legacy at a point for him where he could walk away if he wants. Obviously, the rumors are flowing right now. I kind of hope that he comes back. He's just that good. But let's just straight jump into it. The big topic that's really been going since the Rams have won the Super Bowl is Matt Stafford. Is he now a Hall of Famer, right? He has the ring. He only has one Pro Bowl in his career, but he has the ring. The yards are there. He's 49,000 yards, 323 touchdowns, $161 interceptions. He's been pretty damn good. The big holdback for him is really Detroit, right? When you sit back and look at his career record, it's 86-95. You assume, they're going to get an extension done this offseason. So that record will get flipped around pretty quick. But when you, when you look at him and his Hall of Fame case, is the one ring enough to kind of override that he spent 12 years in Detroit kind of just rotting, right? He was pretty good in Detroit. He put up a lot of numbers in Detroit, obviously, but it never really contributed to long playoff runs or winning the results, right? When you're on in a division stuck with Aaron Rodgers for so long, and he's kind of whipped up on that division for so long, the numbers didn't really matter. He goes here with a competent organization for once, gets a Super Bowl. Does that kind of push him? Does it push him in your eyes into the Hall of Fame, since it's such it's a rampant debate now that he has that Super Bowl?
So for me, there's like two answers here. I don't think Matthew Stafford's a Hall of Famer right now. He's 34 years old, and we've seen some quarterbacks recently play till 40. So there's a chance Stafford plays another 4 to 5 more seasons, if not more. So he has plenty of time to build on the resume. We'll see how long this Rams team stays all put together, right? There's already talks of other people retiring. Who knows what's going to happen? I just think the question gets really interesting because I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but I think if his career ended right now, they would put him in the Hall of Fame. I think he would make it. Slightly below 500 quarterback record, but Detroit in all those years. And some of those years in Detroit, when they were actually winning some games, they had a horrible defense and a terrible run game. So it was literally all on Stafford's shoulders. He's had he's gotten close to 5,000 yards a few times, 4,800, 4,900. He passed it once in 2011. So there is something there, right? He has all the talent in the world. And most people can't win in Detroit. It's complex to me. I have a hard time just putting him in there, but I think the Hall of Fame should be tighter anyway, right? So I'll use other players as an example. I think the public would agree that Eli Manning is going to make the Hall of Fame. He had a 500 career, but he won 2 Super Bowls against that undefeated New England team. So I think he squeaks in, and I don't believe he should be a Hall of Famer. And I think the same thing kind of happens with Matthew Stafford. I think he gets into the Hall of Fame. As of right now, I wouldn't put him in there. But to be fair to him, Detroit's tough, and he has years to build, right? They can run it back. And if he were to stack another year like this, then I think it's a no-brainer. But to me right now, it's borderline, and I would lean against it. But I would be willing to bet that the voters would say that he is a Hall of Famer right now.
Yeah, probably. He just puts up so many. He just puts up so many numbers. As a look at that, the touchdown to interception ratio for a guy that played on such a bad team through his years in Detroit, right? I mean, the Megatron years are pretty cool, but I mean, on the other side of the ball, I mean, the defenses weren't there. The pieces around Detroit's notorious. I mean, we're watching it for years. We're watching it now with Detroit. They're just kind of, they don't get it done. And then he gets out to LA, takes care of business. Yeah, I'm with you pretty much. As I think right now, the voters, they probably would put him in just off of that Super Bowl. But I mean, in reality, if it was me, I would say we got to see how the next 4 to 5 years play out. Can he get another one? Can he continue to, produce at a high level? Will he fall off the cliff next year? We don't expect it. The game's so offensive heavy. Right now with what you're able to do with your wide receivers, right? It's all, you can't touch them and you can't touch the quarterbacks. So he's bound to just put up more numbers and more numbers, but will it generate to success? And that reads into another quarterback, which is also I assume a lot of people would say is a Hall of Famer. When you look at Russ in Seattle, he has 37,000 career yards, 292 touchdowns, 87 interceptions. The career record outstanding though, 104 and 53, but obviously in Russ's case, he was with an outstanding, well-run organization, right? Seattle, good GM, good ownership group. Pete Carroll, his good coach, kind of ran his course now. So, I mean, I think when you look at him, if you say that Matt Stafford, if you wouldn't put him in right now, would you put Russell Wilson in right now? He has, he has one Super Bowl as well. He has 9 Pro Bowls. So it gets there. These are guys, Pro Bowls are obviously, I guess, big. I kind of hate the Pro Bowl, to be honest. I think it's like just it's an overvalued thing kind of, because so many guys withdraw and pull out. You see guys like Kirk Cousins slide into the Pro Bowl this year, even though he had a great year. But it's like, obviously, if Tom Brady wanted to show up, he would probably be a Pro Bowler. Who else? Aaron Rodgers as well. But those guys, I don't believe were. So, I mean, would you put Russell Wilson in there if you say that Matt Stafford is not? Both have one Super Bowl. Stafford's numbers a little bit better, obviously passes a little bit more, but I guess you could say Russell has a little bit more rushing yards. I believe like 6,000 career rushing yards, if that really boosts the case anymore. I would say. What are your eyes on Russell Wilson?
Yeah, this one's really interesting because I was going to use Russell as the example too. I think if you ask the public, right, most people believe like he's a Hall of Famer already. It's close to me. Like if it wasn't like before the last couple seasons, I would have said, yeah, he struggled a little bit, but I mean, I think they're both borderline, honestly. They both are very talented and they show flashes of being great and like pure greatness. And they have the ability, they've won Super Bowls. It's just tough to me, but like the way it's voting, I would think Russell gets in right now. And the same thing goes for Stafford. I think in the next 4 to 5 years, they both have the ability to pile on their resumes and like make it not a question. The one thing to me that really stands out for Russell that's really Hall of Fame worthy is his touchdown to interception ratio, which is much better than Matthew Stafford's. That's where there's a big difference. I think Stafford's 323 to 161, which is about like a 2.2-ish touchdown to interception ratio. And then Russell Wilson's is just phenomenal. It's 292 to 87, which is 3.35. That's an incredible touchdown to interception ratio. To me, that really stands out. But I don't know, right? Because like 9 Pro Bowls doesn't mean that much to me. It's not the same as an all-pro nod. Big difference in my eyes. But I think they're close, right? And I think if we're going to let one in, we let the other in.
Yeah, I think if you're in the camp of, like if Stafford's in, then you'd have to say, Russ is in. But if you're in the camp that like Matt Stafford as of right now is not in but the one Super Bowl, then I don't know how you can sit back as of right now and say that Russell Wilson is in. So I think you're perfectly, you're spot on, right? If one guy's in, they're both in your eyes. But I assume there'll be people, if you hit the Twitter and you post this on Twitter, I'd assume there's plenty of people that say Matt Stafford, nope, Russell Wilson. Yeah, I mean, the touchdown interception ratio is pretty impressive, but I mean, throughout his career, at least when I've watched Russell Wilson, he's not really like, right, he's not a slinger. Matt Stafford's a slinger where he'll try to fit the ball in the tight windows. We've seen multiple times where Russell Wilson won't do that. I mean, he'll run the football, he'll throw the ball away. He won't take that shot that maybe a guy like Matt Stafford would. And I mean, early in his career, when they were running it with the defense in the Super Bowls, he didn't really have to, right? Matt Stafford kind of had to do a lot in Detroit to kind of will that team forward. That Russell Wilson, when they had the Legion of Boom, he just had to be efficient, right? Be good enough. Obviously, he's been great throughout his career. We won't take anything away, but he didn't have to kind of be on that level to will them to wins like Matt Stafford didn't take risks that Matt Stafford probably did.
100% right, because when Stafford got in, it was like on Stafford's shoulders right off the bat, right? And even in the last couple of years, they're like barely putting on Russell's shoulders. It's like Seattle feels reluctant to do it, right? There's the whole let Russ cook and the MVP narrative. He's never gotten votes the last couple of years. And in the last 2 years, they let Russ cook for about maybe half the year, and then the offense gets stagnant. It doesn't really work as great. And it's just crazy because other Hall of Famers, we never really saw the offense stagnate to the point that Seattle's did, right? 2 years ago, when they made the playoffs and they really folded down the stretch, DK Metcalf was talking about in the offseason on podcasts that they were straight up figured out, right? It was run the ball, play action, verticals. And that was really it. So like that is kind of a knock on Russell to me, because like when Seattle has let them cook, it works for a little bit. And then he starts to throw some picks and then it kind of spirals. And then for Stafford's case, they didn't have a choice, right? It was let Stafford cook or lose every single football game. So like, that's a really good point, honestly. Stafford's a slinger, and he seems to be able to put his team on his back better than Russell can.
Yeah, and I did not even realize scrolling through Pro Football Reference, they actually have a Hall of Fame monitor where I guess they use some metric system. I'd have to go through and actually look at it. But the average Hall of Fame quarterback, according to their metrics, has a score of 104.14, and Russell Wilson or Matt Stafford is a 68.44, and what is it? Russell Wilson has an 80.29. So according to whatever metrics that Pro Football Reference uses, obviously a pretty good stat site if you want to see so many breakdowns of statistics, they're saying that Russell Wilson is he's closer to being a Hall of Famer than Matt Stafford is, although they both have one ring, which is it's super interesting. I'd have to dig in. I will dig in once we get off here, kind of what that metric and what they look at and what they break down, because it's fascinating, right? It really is, now that Stafford kind of joins that elite crew. But then, as we talked about a couple of days ago, like the bar is getting lifted so high because of Tom Brady, right? When Tom Brady wins 7 Super Bowls, it's almost like these quarterbacks are expected to win 2, win 3, especially when you look at Russell Wilson. He could arguably have 2 or 3, right? If he doesn't throw a ball at the 1-yard line, they have another, right? They win, he has 2, and then who knows what happens. I mean, the second that play happened, I said the Legion of Boom was done, right? That dynasty crumbled on that throw. And obviously years later, won Super Bowl out of it. But so it's crazy. The Pro Football Reference is saying, and the bar just keeps going high as we talked about.
And the Tom Brady thing, inflating the quarterback Super Bowl wins, is so real, right? Because before that, quarterbacks weren't supposed to win more than 1. Like, you win 1 in your career and it's very successful. I think the exceptions were, I don't know, Troy Aikman in a dynasty, Joe Namath in Joe Montana, in the Niners dynasty, and all that, and Steve Young. Other than that, you really didn't win more than 1, right? Brett Favre got 1. John Elway got 2 at the end of his career. Peyton Manning technically got 2, right? He was carried on the second one, but most of these guys only get 1, right? And like Tom Brady has just skewed the crap out of it. And now we look at guys that don't win more than 1 Super Bowl and we like shame the shit out of them, which brings Aaron Rodgers into question. But that one gets more interesting to me because he is so damn talented and he's had such good teams, including this year, that's like, how could you not penalize him? But I don't know. It gets really complicated in the Hall of Fame vote. And then the other thing to me is that like the people that vote on the Hall of Fame are writers, right? And sometimes they'll let non-football reasons keep people in or out. I'll use Terrell Owens as an example because he should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. He did not get it first ballot because of personal reasons with writers. So it's like the Hall of Fame is tricky, right? It gets very up and down. And to your point with the Hall of Fame monitor, I'm looking at it right now. They got Eli Manning at 85. So like, do we really feel Eli Manning was a much better quarterback than Matthew Stafford? I'll definitely say not.
Exactly. Just looking at other guys on that list, Matt Ryan, he's the closest to what the average Hall of Famer is, which is a 109. He's at 102.6. He obviously does not have a Super Bowl. He might have the
MVP.
biggest, yeah, he does have the MVP, but he might have the biggest dent with that kind of that collapse, right? He's always going to be tied to that 28-3 collapse. Big Ben's on there. Obviously, he's probably a lock. He has 2 Super Bowls. Philip Rivers there at 98. I mean, that's where we can kind of get into that conversation with other quarterbacks to kind of drag this out a little bit more with kind of, we mentioned a lot, like Cowboys fans like to rip on Tony Romo, but he was a pretty damn good quarterback. I mean, in my eyes, when I went through and looked at it, just doesn't have the durability, right? Just didn't play long enough. Got beat up. It was just kind of unfortunate, right? But when he was there, he was pretty damn good. And then you get into the other guys like Philip Rivers. Like, does Philip Rivers get into the Hall of Fame? 63,000 yards, obviously 134 wins, 106 losses, and a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. But in Philip Rivers' case, you could say he never really brought the team to the next level, to a Super Bowl, right? Didn't bring him to the next level even in the playoffs, right? He early exits. He kind of got piled in a tough era, right? When you're in an AFC with Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and those guys. But I mean, yeah, what do you make of a guy like Philip Rivers or Tony Romo?
So Tony Romo, I liked a lot actually, and I like as an Eagles fan, I actually like Tony. Um, I thought he was very talented. He just got beat up, and he doesn't have the longevity. He's not a Hall of Famer. I don't think it's a question, but he might be a better quarterback than some of those Hall of Famers in there because some of those are just numbers based, right? Like Eli Manning, Joe Namath, some other ones. But the Philip Rivers one is super interesting because I think he had 2 AFC Championship game appearances, and then the year they went like 13-3 was a first one and done. So it's like there was times where he showed up and there was times where his team should have won and lost. But I think Philip Rivers gets in there just by sheer longevity, right? You're talking he started from 2006 to 2020. Was in the league from 04 to 2020. His numbers have just piled up. They're just so ridiculous at this point. 63,000 yards, 7.8, 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. I mean, there's something to be said about longevity, right? 8-time Pro Bowlers. We already talked about the Pro Bowls being a little iffy. I would put him in the Hall. And at the end of the day, I like to think about because football is so team oriented, obviously, but more so than other team sports. It takes so many things to go right and things to go wrong for other teams to go on Super Bowl runs. I mean, just take this Stafford Rams, right? They could have easily blown the game against the Niners and they almost blew the game against the Bucks. So it's like you need a bunch of things to go right for you. So I try to take that into account with these players because I use Eli Manning as an example a lot because I think he's a lock for the Hall of Fame based on the 2 Super Bowls and his last name. But I would take Philip Rivers over Eli Manning as well. So it's close, but I think Rivers, there's just too long of a record for him not to make it.
Yeah, facts. And then Matt Ryan's kind of approaching that territory as well, right? Like he's going to play for so long. I mean, what do you look at Philip Rivers' career, 244 games. Matt Stafford's or not Matt Stafford. I don't know why I keep getting these guys confused. Matt Ryan's at 222 and counting. Obviously, he's probably going to play a couple more years. He'll probably get to 400 touchdowns with how the league is offensively, which will also put him over the 60,000 yards mark. He'll have over 400 touchdowns. If he can keep he's been sneaky efficient, right? He's thrown double-digit interceptions, but it's not like an egregious amount. So you could keep the interceptions under 200, which would help him. And then obviously the record, although he's been on some sour teams as of late, still 120 and 102. So he's kind of a guy as well, right? When we're discussing Russell Wilson and Matt Stafford, it's like if you're going to put one or the other in there, I think if Philip Rivers gets in, then Matt Ryan will eventually get in as well. You mentioned the MVP. He has Pro Bowls. He has all the awards from that 2016 season. I think if a guy like Philip Rivers gets in, Matt Ryan will certainly find his way to the Hall. Another interesting one, just a random old head that everybody rides on is Troy Aikman, right? Like Troy Aikman didn't have to do anything, right? He played with ridiculous O-line, ridiculous talent around him, just great Cowboys teams. I believe there was one year where he threw Let me find it. Yeah, 1996, he threw 12 touchdowns, 13 picks. Obviously, the league's a little bit different, but I mean, that's a negative touchdown to interception ratio, and he made a Pro Bowl. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like when Troy Aikman's in, who do you make a Troy Aikman? It's hard to deny any of these guys when you look at the Troy Aikman. Obviously, the league was different, but I mean, he is literally the definition of a quarterback that got carried, right? He had elite talent around him, and he just had to do it enough.
Yeah, so I might get attacked on this one, but I don't think Troy Aikman was that good of a quarterback. He was on a phenomenal team, and he had to do just enough, right? I think I'm going to get flamed for this, but my mind comes to Alex Smith, right? He was an okay quarterback, but he could get it done. I don't know. The team around Troy Aikman was just, for the record books, incredible, right? Before the salary cap era, Jerry dished out the money. They had studs everywhere. I think Tony Romo played quarterback better than Troy Aikman did. I'm young too, so people use that to discredit my Troy Aikman take, but I'm just not crazy about Troy Aikman. If we're going back to this Hall of Fame monitor on Pro Football Reference, he is at 64.28. Pretty damn low compared to the 104 average for the Hall of Fame quarterback. I firmly believe Aikman got there because of the star on his helmet and being part of the dynasty. Which, hey, I think Eli's going to get there because of the 2 Super Bowl runs and his last name's Manning. So maybe sometimes that's all it takes. But like, to me, they're in the same category, right? Troy Aikman's there, but I like Phillip Rivers over Troy Aikman. I like Matthew Stafford over Troy Aikman, Russell Wilson. Basically, all the names we've talked about, I prefer them over Troy Aikman.
Yeah, pretty sure. Yeah, Troy Aikman literally got carried. Yeah, I don't care what any Cowboys fan rolls on and say your boy got carried. You're probably not even old enough to see him play either. So bring out. You had to go find a VHS player to kind of go see the Troy Aikman. I think he won a Super Bowl MVP and he threw for like 150 yards. So they just kind of had to shoe him one in, right? They had to add to the legacy. They had to get him a Super Bowl MVP to kind of go on. But yeah, I mean, it's funny. The Hall of Fame is such a broad debate, right? You said tighten it up. I do like it, but we're really like kind of past that point, right? It's kind of we're at a point where you can't when you have guys that are like, look at this guy, look at Troy Aikman got in. They'll never say it publicly, but I mean, if I'm Matt Stafford and one day I don't get into the Hall of Fame and I go and look and say, look at Troy Aikman, he got in. I'd never had that roster around me, right? So it's such just a great debate, and I only think it'll evolve, right, as we have these guys. If there's any more of these guys that are kind of they've been great but don't have that ring, and finally get a ring, right? Then it'll just the debate will forever evolve, in my eyes.
Also, the thing with the Football Hall of Fame is that the sport has changed so much from like in the last 20 years, right? The offensive rules or all the rules being geared towards offensive players, defensive players not being able to really hit, concussion scandals and CTE being known to the public. So now they have the whole player safety thing and they want to take less head hits out of the game. I say all this to show that like football has changed so much. So even like in these conversations, it's like almost unfair to compare Aikman and Stafford, right? Like I think the talent level's immensely different and Aikman didn't have to do much still, but like it's just so hard to compare the numbers straight up because the game is so immensely different.
Yeah, the numbers are tough. Yeah, I mean, you got it, but I just find a hard time to believe, right? Like we've watched these guys. I feel like if you put Matt Stafford on the Cowboys teams, he thrives, no issue. I don't know if you throw Troy Aikman on this Rams team just this year, and he can get right. Can he get the job done?
If I had to guess on that hypothetical for some random reason, I would guess Aikman looked closer to Goff than Stafford.
Right. Yeah, probably spot on. It's so interesting to debate. Kind of another one before we even move off. Not really Hall of Fame, but it's really a Super Bowl MVP voting. Obviously, Cooper Kupp won it this year. I found out that only 16 people vote on it, and the NFL wants those votes in by the 2-minute warning of the fourth quarter, right as the game wraps up. I guess their kind of hope is that the game's over with, and it's kind of such an easy decision, which I don't really have an issue with that. It's kind of just weird. I'd assume you send one from both sides, right? So there's no way like the Bengals, if they would have won, Cooper Kupp wins the MVP still. But what do you make of just 16 voters holding that kind of decision? I mean, in my eyes, I think it should at least be doubled. And I think you should kind of, I don't know, put out the last 5 minutes, kind of run some type of fan vote, right? It doesn't have to be a high percentage, but just put the top guys out there and let, I don't know, 5%, like the fan vote hold a little bit a little bit of value in that, right? I just think it should be expanded, right? 16 guys should not decide a Super Bowl MVP, because in my eyes, I thought Aaron Donald should have won it. He made the biggest play of the game, obviously, on the last play. He really saved Jalen Ramsey too, who was on the turf. If Joe Burrow had another second,
Yeah.
Jamar Chase probably catches the touchdown, because I'm going to say Joe Burrow doesn't miss him if he has the time. But Aaron Donald, I believe he had, yeah. I mean, he dominated. He ratcheted it up down the stretch, and I believe, I mean, it was just, it seems like it was going to be offense either way in my eyes. Like it felt like if Matt Stafford snuck it in, he was going to win the MVP for leading the drive. And then Cooper Kupp caught a 1-yard touchdown. I mean, obviously that whole drive down the field, he was huge, but he was kind of blanketed for quite a bit of the game, right? But what do you make of that? 16 people voting for the Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah, to me, I would up the number of people voting, and I have a hard time believing like we have to get the votes in before the 2-minute warning. Really, like if the game's not close, like then sure, but like if there's last minute heroics, then I don't think the votes should go in yet. Like you're telling me it's 2022 and we can't figure out a way to just like digitally vote and get the records in instantly. You know what I mean? So it's like you could up the number from 16, which I'm in favor of, but I feel like you could also wait to get the votes in post 2-minute warning, or like, I don't think that should be like an arbitrary mark, right? Depending on how the game goes. Because let's say Aaron Donald doesn't get that sack and they get that Jamar Chase touchdown, then everything goes crazy in the last 2 minutes. The MVP changes. I just think like with technology, you should be able to get those votes in fast. And like, you don't need that 2-minute warning to hamper you. Yeah. And then I was going to say just to the fact that it was Kupp, I'm not mad about it being Kupp. Like I can see why, but I would have given it to Aaron Donald. I thought he was great. We don't see defensive MVPs much. Honestly, Von Miller only got his because Peyton Manning was a shell of himself. If he had that same game, but Peyton was like Peyton, they would have given it to Peyton probably because it's offense. So I don't know. I think it should be changed and tweaked slightly.
Facts. Yeah, for sure. I would agree. And that's not just because I had a bet. I don't really have a problem with Cooper Kupp winning it, right? Like it doesn't bother me that Cooper Kupp won it. I just found that it was interesting that in my eyes, at the end of it, I felt like Aaron Donald would have been third on the totem pole, right? If Cooper Kupp doesn't catch it, as I said, and Stafford sneaks it in, I feel like Stafford wins because the narrative is just kind of build the quarterback legacy up. It's offensive, and to get him a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP, bang, there you go. But Cooper Kupp made the play at the end. He gets it. So it felt like the defense and Aaron Donald was kind of an afterthought, and they really ratcheted it up and kind of sealed the deal, right? They really abused that Bengals front at the end to kind of seal it, yeah, to get them that W. But
back-to-back games for him too, because he sealed the deal in the conference championship too.
Just huge, right? And he gets doubled and triple teamed at times. Like he just finds his way. The guy is an absolute animal, but hey, it happened. We're not going to go back to the Super Bowl, but I mean, yeah, that's just the debate about the Hall of Fame is great. It'll only evolve over the years. It's just a super good debate. And as you said, it's kind of tough to look at guys back in the day, the Troy Aikmans of the world, and try to bring them forward, but we always try to, right? It's like with baseball, when people try to bring Babe Ruth forward, there's an everlasting debate on that. But I mean, now to kind of move it off of the Hall of Fame, I kind of created this thing. I kind of robbed it. I saw it on another show, but I'm going to have a list of teams. I have a list of teams just to fly through who are kind of middling on the fence with their quarterback. And we'll just go through, and should they move off of the quarterback that they currently have, or should they run it back with them for another year, right? If there's not really another better logical option out there, just run it back with the guy. And let's roll with the Indianapolis Colts. Obviously, the rumors right out of the gates are that Carson Wentz is going to be released or traded. I would lean towards release. I don't think they're going to really find a trade partner. When that kind of leaks out, right, teams aren't going to trade when they know you're going to cut a guy anyway. So should the Colts, realistically, should they run it back with Carson Wentz for one more year, or should they move on?
What's funny about this one to me is that like you could realistically talk yourself into running it back one more time, right? They had a horrible start to the year with injuries, and they had a bad start, and then they got really hot, and they looked damn good at one point, and then they blew it to the damn Jacksonville Jaguars at the end. And I think if they're foolish, they'll talk themselves into it, but the Colts are a smart organization. They'll cut Carson Wentz and cut bait with him, which I think is the smart move, because that's just such a sour taste, ruining your playoff chance to Jacksonville. a very bad football team. I can't get that taste out of my mouth because I had the Colts as a hot wild card team. They let me down. Carson let me down again. So I would move on.
Yeah, that's yeah, I mean the ending is obviously sour. I mean, if I'm kind of the Colts though, I probably run it back. He had 27 touchdowns, 7 picks. I mean, the bad was pretty bad. He was beat up a little bit. But he had 3,500 yards, 62 completion percentages up from the 57 in his final year in Philly. When I look at Carson Wentz, if you're not getting Aaron Rodgers, who better are you getting, right? Like who's coming in? Is it going to be Jimmy G? Like does Jimmy G take you that much further than one more year of Carson Wentz? Does he really? Maybe he could, right? Maybe he could somehow sneak you in. I don't really see it. I think they'll probably cut him, but I mean, if it's me, and I'm not even really a Carson Wentz guy anymore, used to, I'd probably run it back just because there's really not that much of a better option out there, right? Like you're looking at the Jameis Winstons of the world, obviously the Jimmy G's. Are you going to swing a trade for Rodgers? Watson's not going to happen because it's in division, right? So I just think the options that are better are they're not really there in my eyes. And I think another year with Frank Reich could really turn it around. I think it could, but I think they've kind of went past when stuff starts leaking. Now the locker room's kind of like, it's bang, right? It's kind of right back to Philly 2.0 with him.
Yeah.
So they could have probably went about it better, but it's definitely an interesting one.
You make a good point though. The biggest issue is not like if it's not Carson next year, who's it going to be that's actually better? And that's the real struggle.
Yeah, for sure. Next team on the fray is the Cleveland Browns. Baker Mayfield, tumultuous year, bad year, shoulder injuries, commercials, throwing off the back foot and rolling his ankle, 4 interceptions on Christmas Day. Skip still gave him a B+ for that night.
Yikes.
Yeah, so what do you make? They obviously picked up the 5th-year option. If you're Cleveland, do you roll out Baker for another year? Do you look to find a trade partner, get a pick, try to snag something, and maybe roll with a middling level, run the hell out of the ball, use your talent, and roll with Case Keenum? Or do they swing for the fence? You move off Baker and you try to convince Aaron Rodgers to come to Cleveland. Do you try to swing a deal for Deshaun Watson? If you're the Browns front office right now, what are you doing with the Baker situation?
So what I think the Browns will do is just bring back Baker, run it back, try and get him healthy for a year, and show those. See if they still believe in Baker, those flashes of greatness. Like see if he can harness those and be better. I think that's what they actually do. I would cut bait with Baker. I've never been a big Baker guy. I think this Browns team is so incredibly stacked and talented. I think Jimmy G could win a lot of games for this football team, right? It's like a lot of running the ball and just making the right plays, what he's very used to. I don't think this is a Colt situation where they're like, well, we need someone better. I think Case Keenum could run this offense. It's about not making mistakes and getting the ball into your playmakers' hands, right? This is not an offense that's about airing it out and like big time quarterbacking. It's about that elite run game, that offensive line, and having that defense bend not break for you when you need them. And they're very capable of that. I would cut ties with Baker. I think Jameis could do it. I really think Jimmy Garoppolo would be a good fit here, actually. But I think there's some quarterbacks they could run with outside of Baker. I would cut bait. I think what the Browns actually do is run it back.
Yeah, they probably run it back. I'm with you. I would cut bait. It's just too much personality. He's kind of soured guys out, right? He was the reason that Odell left town. He was the reason Odell got blamed. He just has too much going on. That's kind of been the thing with Baker his entire career, even in Oklahoma, right? When he's sticking flags in the ground and flipping off fans and doing stupid stuff. I think he's too much personality, and it's kind of another situation where he soured that situation. And you're right. You're right. Case Keenum, arguably last year when he was hurt, Case Keenum probably could have done the job, and they didn't let it happen. So I mean, I would cut ties with Baker. It's hard to find a logical partner, or if they would just have to straight up, bounce him, which is why you're right on. I don't think they will. They'll just run it back, right? They'll say the shoulder injury. They'll use that narrative. But yeah, I don't know. They're just wasting a lot of talent on that roster. It's a very talented roster, 2 good running backs, and as you said, yeah, Jimmy G there would be perfect, right? Don't make mistakes, hand the ball off, let the defense do their thing, and you probably win football games with that group.
This is going to sound weird, but my ideal Cleveland quarterback would be Stefanski getting Kirk Cousins again. It's not realistic at all. I know that, but I feel like that would be a perfect fit for him.
Facts. it would be interesting for sure. I don't know if Browns fans would be super happy about that one either.
True.
Right? Like I think it's a hard sell. I don't know. I'd be pretty pissed. He did have a good year though, Kirk Cousins. Shout out to that guy, and I think he might be working towards an extension, which is weird in Minnesota. Let's move on to the next one. Tennessee Titans, 1 seed. They kind of fell short. Ryan Tannehill, 3 picks. He has a huge cap hit coming up, which kind of makes it tough to move off. But I mean, if you were Tennessee, you at least got to be thinking about it, right? Like, how far can we realistically go with Ryan Tannehill? Are we going to rely on our heavily paid running back that, I mean, he's going to get a ton of carries? Will he stay healthy every year? If you're Tennessee, I mean, obviously it's kind of thought in stone. They're going to roll with Ryan Tannehill. It's too much of a dead cap hit. But I mean, would you consider moving off of Ryan Tannehill?
I really wouldn't unless I get like Aaron Rodgers or Deshaun Watson in return, or Russell Wilson, like one of the absolute studs. Otherwise, I really wouldn't, right? Ryan Tannehill is a middle of the quarterback, good player, not great. Has some really bad games at times. We saw some bad interceptions in the playoffs. But Nashville supports him, right? The Titans believe in him. Vrabel believes in him. If you ever listen to any of their players talk about Tannehill or Tanny, they love the dude, right? They really believe in the guy. They think he's a really good athlete. I'm pretty sure he played a receiver in college or some shit like that. So they're all in on Tannehill, right? And honestly, I don't see, like, I wouldn't Jimmy Garoppolo or Jameis or those other guys out there. No, I would take Tannehill instead. I really wouldn't move off of him unless you get a stud in return.
Yeah, and they're not going to get a stud. The cap hit's huge to even move off of him this year. It's like something like 38 million if you were to move off him. Too big. I mean, since he's went to Tennessee, I'm not a huge Tannehill guy, but 7-3, 11-5, 12-5. So I mean, he's resulted in dubs. He's kind of consistent. But I think if you're Tennessee, you kind of have to say, will we be able to get over the hump? Right? Will we beat the Burrows of the world? Will we beat the Mahomes, the Allens, the Herberts? We assume will be back. That's always got to be a discussion. But I mean, if we're just going in regards to next year, I would probably run it back with Ryan Tannehill as well, and just hope he develops, right? Hope the guys around him stay healthy, and you can obviously win quite a bit of football games with him back there for sure. Let's swing it on to the next team, the New York Football Giants. Obviously a hot story. They've been kind of rumored. Sierra wants to go to New York. Russell Wilson. They have Danny Dimes. Obviously, Danny Dimes has his issues. What would you do if you're in the Giants front office this year? Would you give Daniel Jones one more year, see if Dable can fix him? Or are you swinging the picks and trying to get Russell Wilson or just anybody, right? Maybe convince Aaron Rodgers to come to New York. Unlikely, but or maybe even Watson.
I'm swinging the picks. I'm doing whatever it takes to get off Daniel Jones. I'll be honest, I'm biased here. I've been a Giants hater ever since the Gettleman / Jones and picking Saquon number 2 era. I don't think you take a running back that high, regardless of his talent. I didn't believe in Daniel Jones that high. Now the Saquon pick turned out to be all right because the top quarterback in that draft, I believe, was Sam Darnold. So that one wasn't good either. So it's not, they were going to be wrong no matter what. I'm just not crazy about this roster, right? They didn't win a lot of games for a reason. They're in a rebuild. If you have a stud quarterback wanting to play in New York, as in Russell Wilson, then yeah, I'd swing the picks and do whatever it takes to get him. You might not be a winning team right off the bat, but the culture and the franchise starts to change, right? Russell's presence in that building would make a big difference for sure. And I don't believe in Daniel Jones at all. I would even trade Saquon if I had to. Not to shit on Saquon. He's a phenomenal player, but they need picks and they just need to rebuild all around. So if I'm New York, I would say nothing's off the table. I'd be willing to trade anybody on the roster.
Yeah, roster's pretty bad. Situation's pretty bad. 3 years of Daniel Jones resulted in nothing. He's been hurt. And yeah, I mean, it was a reach at 6, honestly, when they picked him back in 2019. He only completed 60% of his passes at Duke. That's a weak ACC conference. It's not like he was really playing top-notch competition in SEC or even the Big 12. He's just not it. I would move off of him in a heartbeat. Wouldn't even think about it. Yeah, I would get Saquon out of there probably as well. He's just kind of not the same after the knee. They're just in a bad shape. They kind of need a culture change, which you kind of see now with Gettleman leaving. They go out and get Dable. Hopefully they can kind of stabilize that. But yeah, I'd be out on Daniel Jones too. The guy is he's not it. Hasn't been it since day one. Let's keep it rolling. Let's go with the Detroit Lions. Obviously, Jared Goff. They obviously also have a top pick this year. I believe the number 2 pick in the draft is held by the Lions. They have Jared Goff, just got him from the Rams. Obviously, they pocket that 32 pick as well. What are you doing if you're the Lions? Are you just rolling it back with Jared Goff for another year? Or you maybe drafting a guy, and maybe you cut ties with Goff and roll with the rookie and let him build, or are you just gonna, we'll ride Goff one more year? Maybe we draft a quarterback either way, 32 or in the second round. Just kind of let him sit and have him for the following year. What would you do with Jared Goff?
Yeah, so if I'm Detroit, I'm bringing back Jared Goff for sure. Whether I draft the guy or not, I think Jared Goff's going to run out and be the starter next year. I think if you're Detroit, right, it's all about just getting better every single day, every single game, every single week. I said that at the beginning of the year for him is kind of lame to go into a season and say our goal is just to get better, right? But like they're not very good still. And what I can say about the Lions as positive is they played hard every single football game. They earned some tough wins this year. They weren't great. I think you run Jared Goff back because you're trying to build a culture and like get guys to buy in. And they clearly are based off how hard they're playing. But the quarterbacks in the next class aren't exciting enough for me to move off of them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm with you. The Lions, they're not really doing anything next year, right? Going and getting rid of Jared Goff, it's not really going to boost the franchise. Dan Campbell kind of laid the foundation. I mean, if Aaron Rodgers leaves the division, you could argue if you can build up some talent around and get guys to come to Detroit. If Aaron Rodgers leaves the division, it's open season. You've seen Jordan Love's not really that great. He might have been a whiff of a pick that's going to take over in Green Bay. We don't know what the Bears are going to look like. New head coach, they go defense. Justin Fields, I mean, not the greatest fit. And then obviously the Vikings, they have Kirk Cousins. They probably had the best setup if Aaron Rodgers was to leave. So, I mean, yeah, if I'm the Lions, I probably go, I run it back with Jared Goff again. And yeah, I just play the waiting game, right? I don't even necessarily know if I pick a quarterback this year because you're not really ideally going to be great next year either. I mean, it's like a 5-year plan anyway. If they're smart, they would just give Dan Campbell time, and you can go in the next year's draft where you have better quarterbacks on the table than these guys. As I've already seen, they've said that none of these first-round quarterbacks or none of these guys are really labeled as starters on the table. We'll kind of get into that in a month or so when draft gets closer. But yeah, I mean, I'd roll it back with Jared Goff. You have nothing to lose. You're just going to be at that same level anyway if you're the Lions.
Yeah, and the Lions need so much help on the roster. If I'm the Lions, I'm just thinking draft best player available regardless of position.
Facts. Yeah, go get the Michigan kid, Michigan D end.
Yeah,
kind of keep him up there. That'll build some fan base, right? People will be excited about that. But let's keep it going. Another one, it's our team, the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, we've been linked to multiple quarterbacks, whether it's Russell Wilson, whether it's Deshaun Watson, since we have 3 first-round picks. We obviously have the incumbent Jalen Hurts. We got to the playoffs with Jalen Hurts. If you're the Eagles, you running out Jalen Hurts for another year, or you kind of exploring maybe if we can get a Russell Wilson in town, maybe if we can somehow get a Deshaun Watson in a trade. What are you doing if you're the Eagles?
this one's really interesting to me because I feel Jalen Hurts has done enough this past year that he deserves another year as the Eagles starter. I think he's earned that, honestly. Jalen has showed immense maturity and leadership skills, great mental strength, and you can tell he gets better and really works hard on his craft. He's always improving, which I love, right? But his arm strength's not quite there. There's some questionable decisions at times, and I've never been big on Jalen. Even though I saw those positive things, I think he's a good quarterback and he deserves to be in the league. I'm not sold on him being a franchise guy yet. With that said, I would run him back one more year because I feel the Eagles roster has some good players and some strong units, but there's still too many holes on the roster. I would, as an Eagles fan, I'd much rather than use the 3 picks to improve the roster and then figure out quarterback maybe next offseason, or if Jalen improves and there's nothing to figure out, right? But it's hard to pass up a stud if they could get a stud with those 3 first-round draft picks. I just feel the team is better served if we run Jalen back, give him another year, which I think he's earned it, but more importantly, using the draft picks to strengthen the roster.
Yeah, if I'm the Eagles, I run it back with Jalen Hurts. They're in the NFC East. Your competition right now, quarterback-wise, the best quarterback in the division is Dak Prescott. a great year, but I mean, he's not really a world beater, right? Like we saw Dak Prescott at the end of the year kind of become what he is. Then you got to deal with Daniel Jones slash whoever they go get, but it's still the New York Giants. And then you have Taylor Heineke as the Commanders. I just think there's no real, right? We're not in a tough division where the quarterback spot is loaded, so there's nothing forcing our hand to really make a move right here. I'd rather use the picks, use the cap space to kind of fill out the rest of the roster around him. And then if it doesn't work next year, then you kind of sit back and you can maybe make a run, right? It's kind of the thing where if you're going to be bad, you'll be bad enough next year where you'll be in play to draft a quarterback and kind of run it back, but use the picks, get young defensive guys, fill out the roster and just run it back. The division doesn't really force your hand as a whole because there's not really great quarterback play in the NFC East.
That's actually a really good point. I didn't even think about the division point, is that like the NFC East can be won with subpar quarterbacking.
Exactly, for sure. The NFC East can be won, with some subpar guys. I believe there is one more. Yeah, the Commanders. What do you do if you're the Commanders? They got Taylor Heineke obviously there. The fans kind of like him. He's kind of got that like vibe. But I mean, if you're Washington, you got to be trying to do whatever it takes to go out. They're another team in the running. They maybe have to trade players, years of picks, but I mean, they kind of have a good foundation. They're kind of one of those teams where if they get an elite quarterback, if they get a Watson, if they get a Wilson, where they could really make a push at something because they have enough pieces still on that team. Obviously, they have Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Gibson. They just have so much stuff. I mean, if you're the Commanders, you got to be saying you're going out, finding a way to get a top-notch quarterback. Maybe if it's even Jimmy G, right? Jimmy G, if the defense kind of returns to the form that they were 2 years ago, not this year, but the year before, you can win a lot of ball games. You can easily win the NFC East with a guy like Jimmy G. I know the fan base won't be happy. I know one of my buddies is a Commanders. It's so weird saying Commanders too. I'd rather have been football team, but he's a fan. He's against Jimmy G. He wants to trade the house for Russ. But what do you do if you're if you're in the GM office of Washington right now? Are you rolling it back with Heineke? Or are you going? You got to get anything, right?
Yeah, I'm going to do my best to not have Heineke be my starting quarterback next year. No offense to him, journeyman. Congrats on some starts. He had his moments, but if you're the Commanders, terrible name by the way. If you're the Commanders, I would I would mortgage whatever to get a stud quarterback. I mean, obviously don't hollow out your roster. They have a good roster, but I would trade the draft picks if you can attract a stud quarterback. The team has the potential to be very, very good, right? We went into this season thinking that defense was going to be the same as the year before that, and like thinking if you can get subpar quarterbacking from Fitzpatrick, and you add these weapons, they could be pretty damn good. None of that worked out, right? But like on paper, they still have some key pieces for that roster to be good. And like I wouldn't. It'd be a fine line, right? Not mortgage the whole future because the roster's not that good, but I would give up quite a bit if I could attract a damn good quarterback to the Commanders.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, weird name. Pretty garbage name. Yeah, I mean, if I was them, definitely. Yeah, Heineke's a cool backup, and yeah, I wouldn't really mortgage the future. I don't know. It probably costs too much in my eyes to get a Wilson or Watson. I'd maybe settle for a Jimmy G. Who can do enough if your defense lives up to the expectation. They're getting Chase Young back, obviously, off the knee. They have a lot of guys up front, Jonathan Allen, De'Aaron Payne. They have a lot of defenders that if they just had to swing a single pick to get Jimmy G, I think it would be a step up from Heineke, right, for sure. I think I have one more team. I do. Yeah, the Atlanta Falcons. They're always interesting. We talked about Matt Stafford in the Hall of Fame debate, but I mean, when you're the Falcons, it's kind of fans. I thought it was weird that they didn't take Justin Fields last year, right? The Georgia kid, he's from Georgia, go to the Falcons. He could even sat a year behind Matt Ryan, kind of got groomed maybe a year or two. If you wanted to run 2 years of Matt Ryan, really give him some NFL seasoning before he takes over. But I mean, if you were the Falcons, what do you do? It's been a couple straight losing seasons. Matt Ryan, huge cap hit. Or are you running it back with Matty Ice? Or are you kind of looking, maybe we draft a guy, find something going into this season? I assume they're just going to run it back just because of how much. But I mean, in our hypothetical world, what would you be doing?
I'd run it back with Matt Ryan, right? Because pretty much feel that the quarterbacks to draft are not very strong, right? Let's say you find one you like. Well, there's no harm in sitting behind former MVP Matt Ryan and learning, right? I don't think that does any kind of, I think that would help him in the long run. And the Falcons roster is just not good enough, right? To where like you would want to mortgage a bunch of picks. Like if you're Atlanta, you kind of need to ride out Matt Ryan's contract, get him off the books. And then, but while you're doing that, just kind of try and build up your roster, right? Because they might not have Calvin Ridley anymore either. I don't think he wants to play there. You added Kyle Pitts, but there's a lot of holes on this roster, right? So, like, I would just bring Matt Ryan back and use your draft picks to strengthen the roster. And if you find a quarterback you like, there's no damage in having him sit behind Ryan because the odds are he wasn't going to be very good starting right now because his class isn't that strong. So I think it's definitely the smart choice here is just bringing Matt Ryan back.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'd roll back Matt Ryan. I just think it's too expensive to move off. He's been good enough. But I'll tell you what, I mean, that's a team. If the Falcons did want to move off, if you're the Browns, call them up, right? If you can get Matt Ryan around that talent that's on that team. Although we're kind of past the Browns debate, that could be an option. But yeah, I think the Falcons' smartest move, just run it back with Matt Ryan for another year. Doesn't really hurt. Contract's huge. And it is what it is, right? You're not going to be great, but he'll at least be serviceable, probably better than a rookie, right? You don't want to stunt a rookie's development around a bad roster when he's not really ready.
Yeah.
Like I said, this class, they don't really have a lot of guys that I know that are ready to go day one. But somebody will make a bad move. So we'll see who does it. Yeah, I guess that's kind of wrap up for kind of the football. We haven't really talked basketball in so long, and it's like All-Star weekend. So it's kind of, we don't really have to dive super far into basketball, but I mean, I'll just what are your kind of first half thoughts on this NBA? It can really be anything from obviously this past week, Harden, Ben Simmons swap. We saw obviously Giannis and Embiid go back and forth last night. The surprise of DeMar DeRozan's kind of turning into a dark horse MVP candidate, and the Bulls are looking good. Jokic is doing his thing. Luka Doncic has been balling since they got Porzingis off of that team. So what are your takes kind of from the first half as we head into the All-Star break? And we might be, talking a little bit more NBA on here with the NFL season kind of wrapped up.
Yeah, I'm a huge NBA guy, right? Just because I love betting basketball every day. It's like a fun grind for me because there's games every single night. So I've been paying attention. My first half takeaways, I'll just break it up by conference, right? In the West, the Lakers are terrible. Let's get that out of the way. I love LeBron and I wish they were good, but man, they're not even part of the conversation. The West feels like the Suns and Warriors. Now I'm going to hit you with a dark horse. It's my classic dark horse of the Denver Nuggets, and that's with one exception, is if they get Jamal Murray back post All-Star break and he's playing well, then my goodness, that team could win the West. Because with Aaron Gordon, Will Barton, Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, they are stacked, and defensively as well. Denver is a very, very much alive as a dark horse if Jamal Murray's back and playing at a high level. Outside of that, it's clearly the Phoenix Suns number one, with a gap, Golden State, and then a gap for the rest of the West.
The Grizzlies love?
Grizzlies are fun. Ja Morant's been great. Desmond Bain. Dylan Brooks will come back, which will add a great defensive presence on top of some scoring. I love Jaren Jackson a lot. To me, and I can say the same thing about the Cleveland Cavaliers in the East, which what they've done with Mobley, Okoro, Garland. I really like what they're doing. Both of those teams, I think, will win. I think they can win a playoff series. I just don't think they have. They're very young, right? I don't think they have it yet because, like, in a playoff series, Ja Morant has to outduel Steph and Clay and all them for like potentially 7 games. He has to outduel Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton for like 7 games. It's a lot to ask, right? And I think this is a great learning year for him, and they've been damn good, and Jaw's been incredible to watch. But no, I got him a step below these other top West guys.
For sure. I wouldn't disagree. The Suns they're pretty remarkable, and they're kind of, everybody's on the Warriors, right? Because Steph's doing what he's doing, Clay's back. Wiggins has been pretty serviceable. But yeah, I mean, I like where the Suns are at there. It's weird for a 1 seed in a conference on a 7-game win streak headed into the All-Star break. They kind of just be smooth riding, right? Nobody's really talking about them. I know they've clinched at least a play-in, right? It's crazy. I think they could lose every game this season and they're still in the play-in. regardless. But I wouldn't disagree with those tiers, right? I think it's clear. I mean, I would say 1, 2, maybe a little bit closer for me than as if they're one is a gap between the two. But yeah, I like those evaluations. Nuggets are interesting, right? Because Jokic always does his thing, and with those group of guys, if you can get Jamal Murray back off the knee, as you mentioned, and he's actually serviceable to the point he was before the injury, then they can be dangerous. Clippers could be interesting, right? Because Kawhi is always rumored. I don't know how it's been going. It's been hinted, hey, maybe he'll come back by playoff time, and then they shoot it down. And then one week it's maybe he'll come back and then he's out again. So, I mean, they're just they're a wait and see team for me, right? If Kawhi and PG somehow can get back together and they're playing roaring in, even in a play-in game, they could be interesting for me.
I don't disagree with that. My only issue with the Clippers is that like it's really hard to get one superstar back in the rotation and in basketball condition ready to go, but let alone to fit two of them in there and meshing well. It's a tough task, right? Like they're capable of doing it. Ty Lue's one of the best coaches in the league. It's just, that's an uphill climb for sure.
No, I mean, personally, I don't think Kawhi comes back anyway, so
I don't either.
I don't think it'll be a debate. But yeah, we can hop over to the East. Obviously, the Heat right now, we head into the All-Star break. Heat, Bulls tied at the top. Then you obviously have the Sixers and the Cavs tied at the 3-4 slot. Sixers have the edge right now by a tiebreaker, I assume. And then the Bucks, you got Bucks, Celtics, Raptors, rebuilding year. Raptors 7 seed right now. And then you got the Brooklyn Nets, obviously the 2.5 men group. They just acquired Ben Simmons. I mean, what do you make of the East as we head into the All-Star break?
I am so excited for the Eastern Conference playoffs to watch the Bulls in a series, the Sixers, the Bucks, the Nets, the Heat. Like it feels wide open, right? I say that, but I'm all Milwaukee, defending champions. I love Giannis. They've done nothing to show they shouldn't be the favorite. Their record is deceptive. Drew and Chris had a very short offseason. They played for U.S. in the Olympics. The three of them, Giannis, Chris, and Drew, barely played at all together the first few months of the year. Since they've been on the court together, they have a phenomenal record. They're still missing Brooke Lopez. So I think Giannis and the Bucks are still the team to beat, right? For sure. But the team right below them to me right now is the Sixers with the addition of James Harden. Which I'm assuming he'll mesh well because James has no problem giving up shots and getting assists instead. Him and Embiid are going to be deadly. And to me, I think they have the best chance to beat the Bucks. No disrespect to Chicago. The Nets, I think, are going to be tough just because Kyrie's in and out. KD's been hurt. I think they're better suited for next year with the full offseason to get Ben and all them accustomed to each other. Not to count them out because it's Kevin Durant, but to me, they're kind of a notch below. I think it's Milwaukee, Philly, and then not to disrespect Chicago, I got them fourth. I would put Miami third just because they had a finals run 2 years ago. You know how damn good of a coach Spoelstra is. I trust Jimmy. You get Bam, you get Hero. They added Kyle Lowry. I like this Heat team a lot. And then the last thing I'll say about the East is I just mentioned all those teams, but I didn't once talk about the Boston Celtics, who have been on a tear lately. They beat Philly by 30. They beat the Nets by 30. They're looking good. And I believe 1 through 7 is separated by 3 or 4 or maybe 5 games in the Eastern Conference. So it's going to be so tight. It's really hard to rank these teams, but I'm going Milwaukee 1, and I think the best team to knock them off is Philadelphia.
I like it. I don't disagree. I also don't disagree with Boston not really being mentioned. Boston, I mean, they beat us by what? It was 40. But I mean, if you look at the splits from that night, they literally hit everything and we couldn't hit the broadside of a barnyard. So, I mean, it is what it is. Celtics, obviously, Jason Tatum, beast, Jaylen Brown, beast. But I don't know about them. As you said, Nets, they're more suited. Yeah, they're you go out and get Ben Simmons, you're maybe punting on the year. It's kind of weird, obviously, with Kevin Durant. They're not exactly going to punt. They're a dangerous team. If they get into the tournament, they're still going to be a dangerous team. I like the Bucks, obviously. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree as well. The Bucks, they're kind of the dark horse. Nobody's really speaking about them in the East, although they're not the 1 seed. They're the 5 seed. But as you mentioned, Giannis has sat out games. Middleton sat out games. Drew has sat out games. So I mean, the defending champs, you got to give them their respect. The one thing with them though is I don't like that those guys played the USA. That's a lot of basketball coming off a championship run to roll right into a lot more basketball, which they're kind of being proactive, right? They're picking games where they can sit guys out, kind of rest them up. They know big picture, get into the tournament healthy, and make a run playoff time, right? That's the big picture when you win these things. But that would concern me. And another thing is Middleton was great last year, but if he wasn't as good as he was last year, he was a year away from being the scapegoat, right? It was often Middleton's not hitting the playoffs, this and that.
Yeah.
So can he dial it up in the playoffs? But I do love that. You got to give them the respect. They're defending champs. Giannis Antetokounmpo is their smooth jumper. I saw that jumper the other night, man. If he can knock that down, that
Looks pretty.
That little mid-range runner is dangerous. Sixers, obviously I'm a Sixers fan, not going to go too crazy. I'm just excited to see James Harden and Joel. A lot of people are like, Harden's a ball hog. Check the assist numbers. He likes to dish, guys. I mean, the guys around him are going to have to hit. I assume we get a buyout shooter, but I just love that fit. Obviously, Harden and Embiid in the pick and roll is going to be it's going to be a hell of a thing to watch, right? I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, the key for the Sixers to me too is like they're going to double team Joel and they're going to double team James. So like if they're going to be a championship team, then Tobias has to take advantage of those mismatches that he's going to get, and Tobias needs the ball out. And he's capable of doing it, right? And if Tobias plays at a high level like that, they're going to be really hard to beat because he's going to have some really ideal matchups with James and Joel on the floor.
Yeah, he's going to get some. I mean, I'd imagine teams try to double Embiid in the paint, but then it's on his job to do what the other guy in the West does. Jokic, find a guy, right? If you're doubled, somebody's going to be open. And yeah, we'll see if Harden can kind of bring back that offensive game. I think he was checked out in Brooklyn and just didn't give a shit. But people like to say now he's washed and this and that. And then, the Heat, I think the Heat are the ultimate dark horse, right? They have Spoelstra, one of the best head coaches. Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry's been good. Tyler Hero's back to doing what he was doing 2 years ago, kind of had a down year last year, but he's kind of back. So I like them, right? Anytime you got a great coach with kind of a good group of guys, Jimmy Butler as well, Bam. They just have a group. They could beat anybody in a playoff series in my eyes, with no doubt. I didn't mention the Bulls. I mean, the Bulls for me, they're fun. Like, I just don't know when you get into the playoffs if DeMar DeRozan is going to keep popping 40 clips like it's nothing, right? Like they're super fun to watch. It's good. I'm happy for the guy that he's out there having fun doing his thing. He's been slandered a lot in his career and kind of disrespected by just the casuals, but it's good for him. I like Levine. Lonzo should be getting back. So they have a fun group for sure. I just have a hard time. Them and the Cavs, I just have a hard time believing like they can knock anybody. I think they can make it a fun season or series, right? I think they could stretch a team to 6, but I think there's like a difference between the Heat, Bucks, Sixers compared to when you look at the Bulls and the Cavs. Like those are they're more the fun teams in my eyes. Like they're fun to watch. They're kind of the Memphises of the East, right? As you mentioned, right? They're fun, but I just don't know when it gets to playoff time how far they can run it.
Yeah, I agree entirely with that. My only thing, if I'm going to just defend the Bulls a little bit, if they do have a chance to win, their best defensive backcourt hasn't been on the court much in Levine and Caruso. So in theory, if you get really healthy and you add that really good defensive backcourt, they have a chance, like better than to me, a slightly better chance in Memphis or Cleveland. But I still think I'm still right there with you. They're in that same tier. A lot of fun to watch. I wouldn't mind them winning. I don't think they have it.
Exactly. And I believe it's Billy Donovan coaching. It's kind of, they're in a weird spot, but they're a fun team to watch. DeMar DeRozan, dark horse. I'd say dark horse MVP guy. I mean, the dude's popped off this last week. It was like 35 plus for 5 straight games or something like that. Might've been 6
on over 50% shooting. That's like Wilt Chamberlain shit.
Exactly. He's just going ballistics. I mean, in the NBA, it's kind of picking up, right? We're at the All-Star game, trade deadline's done. We see what these rosters are going to look like. We're going down the backstretch. NFL is kind of out of the way. So it could open up the room for more NBA talk, but I mean, that's really all we got on this one. I want to thank everybody for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment. If you have any suggestions going into either the NFL offseason or even some NBA topics that you would like to hear talked about, or just want to hear broken down, please either comment them, DM us on Twitter, add us on Twitter, do anything. And we'll make sure to add it in. As always, the Spotify link for audio only listeners will be posted in the description. If you're an audio only person, go ahead and check us out on there. And that's going to do it for today's show.